Hi, I'm Betty Bickers, a psychotherapist in private practice in Santa Ana, California. I've decided to do a series of videos on stress and how stress affects you and why it would be in your better interest to pay attention to managing your stress as effectively as possible. Too often we talk about stress as just being a negative thing, like life is coming at us too fast and furious. But we really don't have an understanding of what stress really is and how it's really attacking the body. By not paying attention to stress, we can often become more physically ill as well as have much more of a difficult life negotiating the demands that life puts upon us. That's one aspect of stress, is responding to the demands that our family puts on us, we put on ourselves, our jobs put on us, traffic demands of us, the weather has demands of us. Our political situation might be something that we have very strong feelings about and feelings that we want to do something about. These are all demands. If we have adequate resources, money, time, energy, knowledge to address those demands in our environment, we don't experience a lot of stress. We walk into a room, it's dark, we need it to be light, we flick on the switch, we don't even think about it. We've now turned darkness into light, and there was no stress involved. But in your life, if you're faced with financial situations that you don't know what you're going to do about, work situations where you feel you've got more to do than time to do it in, family obligations that are just seeming to be mounting up and you don't have the resources to manage them and deal with it. This is when we feel just overwhelmed by stress and sometimes want to crawl under a rock or just crawl under the covers and not come out. Many times I've dealt with people who were so stressed they felt completely powerless to manage their environments at all. I want to educate you that stress is not all bad. Stress is also the excitement of living. It's the excitement of the start of a race. It's the excitement of having a baby when ideally you've planned and want that baby, but still bringing that baby home for the first time can be very stressful even when you've planned for the event. Same thing with a wedding, a graduation, any other major life stage that we go through. So stress is not necessarily the enemy. It's when stress comes too fast and too furious. Another aspect of stress is when we perceive a threat in our environment. And that threat can be physical. We could feel intimidated by someone on a physical basis that they might come after us to harm us. We might be assessing the environment for threats to our safety, the safety of others, our intellectual well-being, our sense of being special at our workplaces could be threatened by someone new coming onto the scene that seems to have it way more together than we do. Any threat to ourselves can be perceived in a stressful manner and cause our body to have a flight or fight response. Our bodies become filled with norepinephrine and sends messages to our muscles that we need to have extra strength or awareness to fight an attack. This is often called the flight or fight response. And we learn about this, but we don't really know how it applies to us on a daily basis. Very quickly, we sense these threats and our bodies become ready for action. And then these threats pass and our bodies return to the state they were before we were threatened. That's our sympathetic nervous system causing our bodies to be ready to fight or flight, and our parasympathetic nervous systems causing our bodies to then return to our pre-fight or flight stage. This can happen many times during the course of a day. If you were to be driving and someone swerved into your lane and then you were able to swerve to safety, you know your heart rate and heart are pounding, sometimes for minutes after you realize you're safe, because it takes a while for your body to return to its pre-stressed heightened state. This is our body actually working to preserve our safety. And when your nervous system operates correctly, we go into this flight and fight mode, and then we go out of it. But too often in the modern world, we are feeling threats from our environment very quickly, very ongoing, and sometimes seemingly at impossible levels that we can't even manage. But stress management is about taking control over those stressors that we have some control over, and also realizing those things that are causing us stress that we don't have any control over. Basically, the serenity prayer is what I'm talking about. So with all the interesting knowledge we have in terms of the body, the mind, and how we get stressed out, it really does come down to paying attention to what you can do things about and recognizing things that we don't have any control over and giving those to our higher power or whatever you want to envision as a way of letting go of things you don't have any control over. In this episode, we're going to talk about 4 different kinds of stress that people tend to experience. They are anticipatory stress, stress of the present, stress of the past, and chronic stress. First of all, we're going to talk about anticipatory stress, things that we worry about in the future, things that we dread, things that we don't even have anything to do with yet, but we're worrying about them. Anticipatory stress is fine if we can plan for the future, cover whatever bases we can imagine might come up. But when we try to live in the future and anticipate everything that might happen, we are doing ourselves a disservice. Life is going to throw things at us, but worrying and dreading it doesn't do anything except increase our body's stress reaction. So my advice with anticipatory stress is plan for the future, but don't live there. Our second type of stress we're talking about is stress of the present. This is the here and now, right now. Life is demanding something from you. It's the unforeseen obstacles that pop up. John Lennon once said, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." Well, in this way, life is stress of the moment, making a demand on you. This is very often work stress, home stress when it involves caretaking of individuals we care about. It involves stress of traffic that's happening right now, stress of weather that's happening right now. Very often, when we can deal with stress of the now, it subsides and we can return to our prior stress levels. But stress of the now involves taking breaths and realizing that the pressure's on, and the more that you can just think clearly, take breaths, and deal with it, the more effective you are in dealing with the stress of the now. Another type of stress we often deal with is stress of the past. Things that caused us much pain in the past that we tend to assume are going to continue to cause us pain. Sometimes people go into therapy because of these pains from the past that they never got over or that remain very right under the surface. This can also be traumas we experienced in the past that we never really got over. Stresses of the past very often can impact our present and our future. If you can focus on things that have caused you pain in the past and work on letting them go, that would be ideal. But for some of us, those pains from the past have left scars that sometimes we need to go into therapy to work through. So with this type of stress, I encourage you to realize that if you have had trauma in your past, therapy is very often a necessary piece to get over those traumas. We're more knowledgeable than ever in treating and addressing trauma as psychotherapists. EMDR is a new form of therapy that's come along in the last 30 years that is very effective in dealing with trauma. Our fourth type of stress that people deal with is chronic stress. This is life situations that you can't get out of very easily. This might be caretaking a sick relative, remaining in a bad marriage that you aren't ready to terminate, or staying in a bad job that is taking so much from you, but you don't really see an option for leaving that difficult job. This type of chronic stress can do the most damage to our bodies. We need to find breaks or support systems, ways of handing off that stress so that we even get an hour or two to ourselves while we remain in these very chronically stressful situations. Chronic stress is the most damaging to our bodies and causes the most illness in our bodies. These types of stress you may deal with a lot, or they may not all be part of what you're dealing with. But I do encourage you to realize, what are the demands you're dealing with? Where does the bulk of demands come from? Very often I found when I was working at Kaiser and running the work stress group that people could deal with stress when it was coming from perhaps just one area of their life. Just their jobs were particularly difficult. Or for some people, their jobs were okay, but their home lives were chaotic and very disturbing, very demanding. People generally can do okay as long as one aspect of their life is some sort of a sanctuary. But what really seems to cause people to get stress overload is when their home life, their love life, their work life are all falling apart. So please notice if stress is coming from you at a lot of different aspects of your life. We're going to keep looking at what you can do to help keep you at your healthiest. So please join me for my next videos on stress management. I think there's a lot to learn, and I do want to emphasize that everybody needs to figure out their own unique stress management plan. That one stress management technique may work great for one person, but not for the next. So please stay with me so that you can find out your best plan for managing your stress. And until then, stay well.